You know what's absolutely wild? There are people walking around this planet who can control entire rooms without saying a single word. They don't scream, they don't beg, they don't chase. They just disappear. And suddenly, everyone loses their minds. Think about it. You've seen this person, maybe at work, maybe in your friend group. The moment they step back, the entire energy shifts. People start questioning everything. They're suddenly desperate for attention they used to take for granted. What if I told you that you could become that person? What if the secret to getting respect, boundaries, and genuine connections wasn't about doing more, but about doing less? What if the answer was becoming unavailable? Hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to share will completely flip your understanding of power dynamics. Here's what Carl Jung figured out over a century ago, and most people still don't get it. When you stop being emotionally available to everyone, when you stop reacting to every trigger, when you choose silence over automatic responses, the world around you goes into complete chaos. And that chaos, that's exactly where your power lies. See, people have been controlling you your entire life through your reactions. They poke, you jump. They demand, you deliver. They create drama, you get sucked in. You've become so predictable that you're basically a human vending machine. They know exactly which buttons to press to get what they want. But the day you decide to unplug that machine, game over. Jung said something brilliant. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. But here's the twist nobody talks about. When you become truly unavailable, you get to see who really gets desperate, who gets irritated, who suddenly needs to provoke you just to get some kind of reaction. And that tells you everything you need to know about how much you've been manipulated without even realizing it. You keep giving pieces of yourself away. Every forced yes when you wanted to say no. Every immediate response when you needed space. Every emotional reaction when you should have stayed silent. You're literally handing over your power, one reaction at a time. And what do you get in return? Exhaustion, frustration, that weird emptiness you can't explain. You know that feeling, right? Like you're running on empty but you can't figure out why. I'll tell you why. You're too available for people who don't deserve even a minute of your attention. This isn't about becoming cold or heartless. This is about what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, authentic, complete. And it starts with understanding that silence can be stronger than 1,000 arguments. Look, I need to ask you something directly. How long are you going to let other people's emotions control your life? How long are you going to dance like a puppet every time someone pulls your strings? Maybe it's time to cut those strings. Maybe it's time to become a mystery, because when you stop being available, everything changes. From the moment you were born, you've been programmed to believe that your worth comes from how available you are to others. Be present. Respond quickly. Keep the peace. Say yes even when every fiber of your being screams no. But here's the truth nobody wants to tell you. This excessive availability isn't making you a good person. It's making you a prisoner. And as long as you keep believing that you need to be accessible 24/7, emotionally or otherwise, you're going to be manipulated, drained, and tossed aside the moment you're no longer useful. You want to know why? Because being always available makes you predictable, and predictable people become tools. Think about it. People treat you like an emotional emergency button. They press it when they need attention, validation, or someone to fix their mess. Then they put you back on the shelf until next time. But you don't see it because you're trapped in this illusion that being present for everyone will make someone be present for you. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work that way. Jung talked about the persona, this mask we wear to be accepted and loved. And it's exactly this mask that keeps you overly available. You say, "It's okay," when you're suffocating. You respond to texts immediately even when you're exhausted. You explain yourself, justify yourself, defend yourself like you owe the world something. But here's what's really happening. The more you put yourself at the center of everyone else's stage, the more you disappear from your own life. Being available all the time, that's not kindness, that's self-abandonment. It's a sneaky way of seeking approval, avoiding rejection, trying to control what people think of you. And the price? Your peace, your energy, your sanity. Here's the cruel irony: the more available you are, the less people value you. Because what's too abundant becomes worthless. Nobody respects what they don't have to earn. Nobody values what's always there. So stop right now and ask yourself, who actually deserves your time? Who deserves your attention, your presence, your listening ear? Or better yet, who deserves your absence? But before you answer that, we need to dig deeper. We need to understand why you react so much in the first place, why you give in so easily. What's driving this almost automatic need to respond, justify, and please everyone? The answer lies in what Jung called psychic energy. And if you don't learn to protect yours, someone else will definitely use it against you. If this is hitting home, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. Your support means everything. Jung didn't see your mind as some automatic machine that just reacts to whatever happens. He saw it as an energy system. Every thought, every emotion, every action, it all consumes energy. The question is, are you choosing where that energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Every time you react impulsively, you're bleeding energy. When you defend yourself against criticism that didn't even deserve your attention. When you respond to provocations just to prove you're right. When you get sucked into pointless arguments. When you bend over backwards for people who don't even appreciate it. You're spending your inner strength on things that don't nourish you. And Jung was crystal clear about this. What you resist persists. The more you react, the more you're trapped. People who live emotionally drained aren't weak, they're just misdirected. You know what happens when you're constantly exhausted? You become vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you become easy prey. Manipulative people can smell this on you. They notice that you don't know how to guard your energy. That you react to everything. That you're always trying to fix everyone else's problems. And they take full advantage. Jung said a healthy mind knows how to keep energy within the system. This means saying no without guilt. Staying silent without feeling cowardly. Observing before acting. Because real power isn't in reacting, it's in choosing when and how to act. How many times have you lost sleep over some stupid conversation? How many hours have you spent replaying what you should have said, or trying to figure out why someone treated you badly? That's energy being drained with zero return. You're keeping ghosts alive that should have died long ago. Psychic energy is like a force field. When it's protected, you walk into a room and command respect without saying a word. But when it's scattered, you become invisible, reactive, fragile. And the world has no mercy for people who give in easily. Start paying attention to your triggers. What makes you react automatically? What makes you lose your center? These are the exact spots where your energy is leaking out. That's where you need to focus. Not to become cold or heartless, but to be selective. To be sovereign over yourself. And here's Jung's biggest revelation. When you start conserving your energy, you break the projections that other people have been placing on you. And that really bothers them. Because now we're entering dangerous territory. The territory of silent manipulation. You think you're in control of your reactions. You believe your responses are conscious choices. But the truth is way darker than that. Most of your emotional responses are programmed. And people who understand this, they manipulate you like a video game controller. Opportunistic people don't need to shout or threaten. They just hit the buttons you've left exposed, and you react every single time. Jung called this projection, when people project onto you what they can't see in themselves. But there's another side to this that most people miss. While they're projecting onto you, you become a blank canvas for all their psychological garbage. You know that friend who only calls when they're in crisis? That partner who always needs you to save the day. That person who praises you but only when you're useful. None of this is random. They're not relating to you, they're relating to the idea of you, to the role you've agreed to play. And why do you agree? Because you're terrified of disappointing people, terrified of not being loved, terrified of being abandoned. The most effective manipulation doesn't happen through screaming, it happens through guilt. When you feel like you owe someone something. When you believe you need to be available, need to help, need to understand, even when it's destroying you inside. Here's the key point. The manipulator doesn't need to control you directly. They just need you to keep reacting the same way. But when you stop reacting, the game breaks. When you start saying no, responding with silence, withdrawing instead of explaining yourself, the projections start crumbling. The mask they've put on you falls off. And this leaves people completely unsettled because they don't know who you are anymore. And worse, now they're forced to look at themselves. And not everyone is ready for that mirror. Your unavailability is a threat because it forces people to confront their own emptiness. The silence you offer reveals the internal noise they don't want to hear. And then comes the attack, the criticism, the emotional drama. Not because you're wrong, but because you stopped serving as their convenient mirror. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When you withdraw, when you stop feeding the cycle, other people's shadows start emerging. And that's unbearable for people who have always used you as their escape. But what about you? Are you ready to deal with being misunderstood, rejected, even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you ready for the silence that comes after the rupture? Because it's exactly in that silence that a new kind of power is born. The modern world is obsessed with noise. Everyone wants to be heard, wants to respond instantly, wants to win pointless debates and prove their point even if it costs them their peace. But there's a power that few people know about and even fewer master. The power of conscious silence. Not the silence of being passive or scared, but strategic, brutally aware silence. The kind that isn't absence, it's amplified presence. Jung saw silence not as emptiness, but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop reacting, you start observing. And when you observe, you see patterns that were invisible before. Emotional cycles, manipulation games, self-sabotage patterns. Silence creates clarity, and clarity is dangerous for people who live to control you. Have you noticed how some people panic when you don't respond, when you don't explain yourself, when you simply disappear? It's not because they miss you. It's because your silence takes away their ability to control the narrative. While you're talking, you're still playing their game. But when you go silent, you change the rules completely. True silence isn't the absence of voice, it's mastery over your own energy. It's refusing to be dragged into someone else's emotional chaos. It's the conscious choice not to engage in battles that aren't worth your time. Jung said that individuation, becoming who you really are, requires this kind of distancing. Because only in silence can you hear yourself without the world's interference. But don't be fooled. Silence has a price. It will distance you from people who only valued the role you played. It will make you incomprehensible to those who only saw you through their own projections. It will make you seem cold, distant, arrogant. But all of this is just a reaction from people who never wanted to deal with your depth, only your usefulness. Here's the hard truth. The more you mature, the more selective you become with your words. Because you understand that every sentence is an energetic investment, and not everyone deserves access to your truth. Sometimes silence isn't retreat, it's sovereignty. It's the language of people who don't need to prove anything to anyone. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces people to deal with their own thoughts, their own internal noise. And that discomfort reveals more about them than any argument could. You don't need to explain your absence. It explains itself. The most powerful silence isn't the one that disturbs others. It's the silence that reconstructs you from within, the silence that connects you to something beyond external approval. It's in this internal space, free from everyone else's demands, that you start recovering your vital energy, reconnecting with your essence. But it's not enough to just cut out external noise. You need to relearn how to use your energy consciously, to choose where it goes, where it stays, and most importantly, where it should never be wasted. Drop a comment if you're starting to see the power in strategic silence. Let me know this is resonating. Understanding all of this intellectually means nothing if you keep saying yes when you mean no, if you keep responding to messages that irritate you, if you keep participating in empty conversations and maintaining relationships that only exist out of habit. Awareness without action is just another form of self-deception. Real transformation starts when you firmly decide to become selective, and this requires emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability isn't about being cold or arrogant. It's about no longer being accessible to anyone at any time for any reason. It's about taking control of your energy, your time, your peace. And it starts with small actions, not responding immediately, breathing before reacting, walking away from chaos before getting dragged in, turning off your phone without guilt, saying not today, saying I'm not interested, saying I won't get involved. But here's the most important part. You don't need to justify your absence. You don't need to explain your silence. You owe nothing to anyone except yourself. And for many people, that's unforgivable. Because when you refuse to explain yourself, you take away their power to keep you trapped in their emotional narrative. Jung understood that every individuation process goes through isolation, but not depressive isolation, sacred isolation. A time of inner retreat where you relearn to listen to your own voice without the world's interference. Want to know a good way to measure your evolution? Watch who starts distancing themselves when you become more reserved. Watch who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Watch who accuses you of changing when you finally start protecting yourself. These aren't signs you're wrong, they're proof you've started freeing yourself. Being unavailable feels uncomfortable at first. You'll feel guilty. You'll think you're being selfish. You'll hear that you're being too harsh. But this is part of the process. You've spent your whole life being conditioned to put yourself second. Of course, change is uncomfortable. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-determination. When you say no to the world, you're saying yes to yourself. When you withdraw from toxic environments, you're affirming that your peace is worth more than any fake connection. And when you stop explaining yourself, you finally start being respected, even if it's only by a few people. But not everyone is ready for this kind of presence. Your emotional absence will expose wounds they don't want to face. It will reveal how much they depended on your chaos to feel in control. And that's when the rupture comes. With the rupture comes pain, loneliness, estrangement, the feeling that you're losing something important, when really you're just freeing yourself. Comment below if you're ready to choose your peace over other people's comfort. I want to see how many of you are truly ready for this shift. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound happens. First comes the silence, an uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside your head. You wonder if you made the right choice, if you're being too harsh, if you're losing people who actually cared about you. But gradually, this silence transforms. It starts to cleanse, to calm, to heal. Then comes solitude, but not the solitude of loneliness, the solitude of complete presence with yourself. The solitude of strength, the solitude of someone who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close. In that space where confusion used to live, clarity moves in. Where anxiety used to rule, peace takes over. Where neediness used to control you, a new kind of strength emerges, the strength of being whole within yourself. Jung said the individuation process, becoming who you really are, requires distancing yourself from the crowd, removing the mask, walking alone for a while. That's exactly what happens when you decide to become unavailable. You're not running from the world, you're returning to yourself. This is where you stop being a reactor and become a creator. You stop being shaped by circumstances and start shaping your reality from within. The people who feel uncomfortable with your absence, they reveal that they never wanted you. They wanted the role you played. Now that you don't fit that role anymore, they don't know what to do with you. And that's liberating. You'll lose people, but you'll find yourself. You'll distance yourself from places, but you'll reconnect with your essence. You'll become misunderstood, but you'll finally start being respected. Because when you're no longer available for anything, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. Don't be fooled, this is a rebirth, a new beginning. The start of a life where you're no longer available for emotional scraps, mind games, or emptiness disguised as affection. Now you only accept what resonates with your peace, your truth, your wholeness. If you've made it this far, part of you is already ready for this new path. Part of you already understands that being loved means nothing if you have to abandon yourself to get it. True self-love begins when you choose yourself, even if it means being alone for a while. So let me ask you directly, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, even hated in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being authentically you? If this message hit you where it needed to, if it made sense on a level that goes beyond logic, write in the comments, I choose my peace. Let's see how many people are truly ready for this transformation. Your unavailability isn't just about setting boundaries. It's about reclaiming your power, your energy, and your right to exist on your own terms. The world will always demand more from you than you can give. But you get to decide what you're willing to offer. Choose wisely. Choose yourself. Because when you stop being available to everyone else, you finally become available to the person who matters most, you.